What if the cold, unforgiving platform of a train station became the only refuge for a mother and her two young children, and an unexpected encounter with a powerful stranger held the fragile key to their survival? This is a story of desperation, unlikely connections, and the enduring power of hope in the face of unimaginable odds. "You can't stay here." The security guard's flashlight beam cut through the pre-dawn gloom, startling Isabella Rossi and her sleeping children. The cavernous Grand Central Terminal in New York City was about to close for its nightly cleaning. "The station closes in 10 minutes, ma'am." Isabella clutched her twin sons, Leo and Lucas, closer. "Please, sir, just for tonight. It's raining outside, and my children have a fever." "I've already been very tolerant, ma'am. If you don't leave, I'll have to call the police." Just then, a man in an impeccably tailored suit approached, his presence commanding attention even in the dimly lit station. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice low and authoritative. "Mr. Blackwood, this woman and her children," the guard began, but the man, Alexander Blackwood, cut him off with a curt gesture. "Leave her. I'll take responsibility." The guard retreated, leaving Isabella alone with the imposing stranger. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment before he turned and walked away without another word. That night marked a beginning. Isabella didn't know it then, but that cold, unwelcoming train station would become much more than a temporary shelter. It would become the crucible where her destiny and Alexander Blackwood's would be irrevocably intertwined. 6 months earlier, her life had been vastly different. She taught ballet at a small academy in the heart of the city. Michael, her husband, worked as a bus driver. They weren't wealthy, but Leo and Lucas never went hungry. Everything changed when Michael was diagnosed with cancer. The treatments, aggressive and expensive, exhausted their meager savings. They sold everything. The car, the furniture, even her grandmother's wedding ring. Nothing was enough. Michael passed away on a Sunday afternoon, leaving Isabella with a mountain of medical debt and a broken heart. The bank foreclosed on their small apartment. The ballet academy closed during the recent economic downturn. "Mommy, I'm cold," Leo murmured, his voice a sleepy whimper. Isabella took off her worn jacket and spread it over her children. At 27, she had never imagined ending up like this, homeless and desperate. But as long as her twins breathed, she would keep fighting. The station gradually emptied. Only a few street vendors remained, packing up their merchandise. An elderly woman selling flowers approached with a worn blanket. "Here, dear. The nights are cold here. Thank you, but I can't pay you. It's not for sale, it's for sharing." The old woman smiled, her eyes kind. "My name is Rosa. Tomorrow, if you like, you can help me with the flowers." Isabella nodded, fighting back tears. In her purse, there were $2 and half a stale loaf of bread. As she arranged the blanket over her sleeping children, she noticed the man in the suit observing her from a distance. "Who is he?" she asked Rosa. "Mr. Blackwood. He owns half of downtown. They say he's going to demolish the station to build luxury apartments." Isabella looked at her sleeping sons. Where would they go when even the station was no longer a refuge? The clock struck midnight. Mr. Blackwood's footsteps echoed one last time before disappearing into the night. Isabella closed her eyes but couldn't sleep. Her mind danced between happy memories and an uncertain, terrifying future, while the rain gently drummed against the station's massive arched windows. Have you ever faced a moment of such profound desperation that an unexpected act of kindness felt like a miracle? Share your stories in the comments below. What if the harsh reality of homelessness forced you to create a fragile new routine, a desperate dance of survival, all while under the watchful, enigmatic gaze of a powerful man whose intentions remained a mystery? Could hope blossom in the unlikeliest of places? Dawn arrived with the screech of the first morning train. Isabella Rossi, as always, woke before anyone else. She had become an expert at finding the blind spots of the security cameras, those hidden spaces where she and her children could exist without being seen, without being a problem. "Leo, Lucas, wake up, my loves." She gently shook the twins. "We need to wash up before people arrive." In the public restroom, Isabella helped them wash with the small bar of soap she carefully guarded in her backpack. With the cracked comb that was one few remaining possessions, she neatly styled their blonde hair, a precious inheritance from Michael. "Are we going to school today, Mommy?" Lucas asked, his voice still sleepy. "Soon, my sweet, when we find a new house." Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, was already setting up her stall when they emerged from the restroom. "Good morning, little ones. Want to help this old woman with her flowers?" The children ran towards her, their faces alight with a momentary joy, while Isabella organized their few belongings. In 2 short weeks they had developed a fragile routine. Rosa would give them a few flowers to sell, and with the meager earnings, they would buy bread and milk. "Ma'am, may I buy a bouquet?" Isabella froze, recognizing the voice. It was him, the man in the suit, Alexander Blackwood. This time he was dressed more casually, but his presence was still undeniably imposing. "Of course, Don Alexander," Rosa responded, her voice cheerful. "Which ones would you like?" "The ones she's holding." Isabella lowered her gaze, handing him the white roses she had just arranged. Her hands trembled slightly as she received the payment. "Keep the change," he said, but instead of taking the flowers, he added, "For your children." Before she could thank him, Alexander had blended into the morning crowd, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. "That's the first time I've ever seen him buy flowers," Rosa murmured, a curious glint in her eyes. "And he's been coming around more often lately." For the next few hours, Isabella sold flowers while keeping a watchful eye on the twins playing nearby. She had learned to divide her attention, one eye on them, the other on the ever-present security guards. Around midday, a group of executives in sharp suits toured the station, taking photographs and making notes. Alexander was with them, but this time he didn't look at her, his expression unreadable. "They're going to turn this into something fancy," a newspaper vendor commented, his voice laced with a weary resignation. "We don't have much time left here." Isabella clutched the few bills she had earned that morning. $30. At this rate, it would take her months to rent even a single room. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Leo said, tugging at her skirt. "Come, children," Rosa beckoned them over. "I have some sandwiches left over from breakfast." As the twins ate, Isabella observed the station. This small corner, nestled beside Rosa's vibrant flowers, had become their temporary refuge, but like everything else in her life lately, she knew it was fleeting. "Why are you crying, Mommy?" Lucas touched her cheek, his small hand gentle. "I'm not crying, my love," she lied, quickly wiping away a stray tear. "It's just that these flowers make me sneeze." That night, when the station emptied once more, Isabella found a small paper bag beside their blankets. Inside were 2 fresh sandwiches and a simple note, "For the little florists." It wasn't signed, but she knew with a sudden, inexplicable certainty who it was from. What if the weight of an empire forced you to make ruthless decisions, even as the quiet dignity of a struggling mother began to challenge the very foundations of your carefully constructed world? Could a single, fleeting connection spark a profound change in a man who seemingly had everything, yet possessed nothing of true value? Alexander Blackwood loosened his tie as he stared out the panoramic window of his 20th floor office. From this height, the bustling Grand Central Terminal seemed infinitesimally small, almost insignificant. "The plans are ready," announced Richard Vance, his chief architect, a man known for his ambition and cold efficiency. "We can begin demolition in 3 months." "What will happen to the people who live there?" Alexander asked, his voice surprisingly subdued. "The homeless," Richard shrugged, a dismissive gesture. "That's not our problem, boss. The city will handle them." Alexander remembered Isabella's piercing blue eyes, her quiet dignity as she sold flowers to survive, the way she lovingly divided a meager meal for her children. "Not our problem." The words echoed hollowly in his mind. "I want a census," he said, his voice suddenly firm. "I need to know how many families are there. How many children?" Richard looked surprised but didn't question his boss's unusual request. "But just do it, Richard." Later that day, at the station, Alexander sat on a secluded bench. From there, he could observe Isabella and her sons without being overtly noticed. The children played with a makeshift cardboard cart, their laughter echoing faintly in the vast terminal, while she meticulously arranged flowers, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Coffee, sir?" A street vendor approached him, his cart laden with thermoses. "Do you know the woman who sells flowers?" "Isabella?" "Of course. She used to be a ballet teacher, you know. Her husband died. Poor thing." Alexander pulled out a $50 bill. "Tell me more." As he listened to her story, a story of love, loss, and unwavering resilience, he watched Isabella share her meager lunch with another homeless mother, a woman whose eyes held the same haunted look he'd seen in his own reflection too many times. Despite having next to nothing, Isabella still found a way to give. His phone buzzed, a sharp, unwelcome intrusion. It was Diana Ashton, his fiancée. "Where are you, darling?" "The club board meeting started half an hour ago. Something came up at work," he texted back, a familiar lie. "At that dreadful station again? I don't understand your obsession, Alexander." He hung up without responding. How could he possibly explain something he didn't even understand himself? At that moment, Isabella looked up, her gaze meeting his across the bustling terminal. For a split second, their eyes locked, an unspoken, undeniable connection, before he quickly looked away, a strange heat rising in his cheeks. "Mr. Blackwood," one of his employees called out, approaching him with a stack of reports. "The investors are waiting for the quarterly update." "I'll be right there." Before leaving, he accidentally dropped an envelope near Rose's flower stall. Inside, there was enough money for a week's worth of meals. A small, anonymous gesture he couldn't explain. That night, in his empty, opulent penthouse, Alexander reviewed the ambitious plans for the new luxury shopping center, where Isabella and her sons now slept on cold, hard concrete. A high-end department store would soon stand. "What is happening to me?" he murmured, crumpling the expensive blueprints in his hand, a sudden, inexplicable wave of self-loathing washing over him. His phone rang again. It was Diana. "Dinner tomorrow with my parents? They want to discuss the wedding date." Alexander looked at the photograph of his fiancée on his desk. Diana was perfect on paper. Beautiful, wealthy, from a good family, everything he should want. So why couldn't he stop thinking about a pair of piercing blue eyes and two little boys playing with a cardboard cart in a condemned train station? What if a single, heart-stopping moment of crisis forced two disparate worlds to collide, stripping away all pretense and revealing the raw, undeniable truth of a shared humanity? Could an act of selfless courage forge an unbreakable bond? "Sophia, wait!" The desperate cry cut through the cacophony of the bustling Grand Central Terminal. Isabella Rossi saw the little girl, no older than 6, escape her nanny's grasp, darting straight towards the railway tracks where an express train was rapidly approaching, its horn blaring a deafening warning. Without a second thought, Isabella dropped her flowers and sprinted, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Look out!" In a breathtaking feat of agility, Isabella reached the child just as she stumbled near the tracks, yanking her back with all her might. Both fell onto the grimy platform as the train thundered past, its immense power a terrifying rush of wind and noise. "Sophia!" Alexander Blackwood appeared, running, his face a mask of raw, unadulterated panic. "My niece!" The little girl, now sobbing in Isabella's arms, clung to her tightly. "Uncle Alex, I just wanted to see the train up close," she whimpered, her small body trembling. Isabella froze, hearing the word, "Uncle." She looked up and met Alexander's piercing green eyes, now filled with a profound, overwhelming gratitude and something else, something deeper, she couldn't quite decipher. "You saved my niece," he said, his voice hoarse, helping her to her feet. "How can I ever repay you?" "It was nothing," Isabella responded, brushing off her skirt, trying to regain her composure. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, not anyone," Alexander insisted, his gaze fixed on her, unwavering. "Let me at least buy you a coffee. I have to take care of my children." she began. But Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, who had witnessed the entire harrowing incident, quickly intervened, already holding Leo and Lucas by the hand, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Go, dear," Rosa urged, her voice firm. "You deserve it. I'll watch them for a moment." In the station's small, bustling coffee shop, Isabella nervously stirred her coffee, while Sophia, now calm, dozed peacefully in her uncle's lap. "Why have you never spoken to me before?" Isabella finally asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. "I didn't know how to approach you," Alexander admitted, a surprising vulnerability in his voice. "I work in real estate. My name is Alexander." "I know," Isabella smiled sadly. "Everyone here knows Mr. Blackwood, the man who's going to demolish our home." "About that," Alexander leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Things might change." "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, the twins, Leo and Lucas, came running towards them, their faces beaming. Mommy, Rosa gave us chocolates." Alexander watched as Isabella gently wiped the chocolate smudges from their small faces, her touch tender, loving. In that moment, a profound decision, one that would irrevocably alter the course of his life, took root in his heart. "Would you have dinner with me tomorrow?" The words escaped him before he could stop them. A spontaneous, heartfelt invitation. "We can take the children to a place where they can play." Isabella hesitated, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "I don't have suitable clothes for." "Come as you are," Alexander insisted, impulsively taking her hand, his touch sending an unexpected warmth through her. "I just want to get to know you better." For a fleeting moment, the deafening noise of the station seemed to fade away. There were only them, their hands clasped together on the worn formica table, and a silent, unspoken promise of something new, something unexpected, beginning to unfold. What if a simple dinner, born from a moment of crisis, began to unravel the carefully constructed defenses of two lonely souls, revealing shared vulnerabilities and the surprising truth that even the most disparate worlds can find common ground. The family restaurant Alexander Blackwood chose was just a few blocks from Grand Central Terminal. Nothing luxurious, but clean, bright, and welcoming. The twins, Leo and Lucas, looked around with wide, curious eyes, their small faces pressed against the window, while Isabella Rossi nervously adjusted her only clean, presentable dress. "Order whatever you like," Alexander said, smiling as he watched the children excitedly peruse the illustrated menu. "I want spaghetti," Lucas exclaimed, his voice filled with delight. "Me too," Leo echoed, his eyes shining. "Children, don't be," Isabella began, a blush rising on her cheeks, but Alexander interrupted, his voice warm. "That's perfect. I'll have spaghetti too." During dinner, Alexander found himself observing Isabella as she patiently cut the pasta into small, manageable pieces for her sons, gently wiped their messy mouths, her eyes shining with an undeniable, fierce love as she watched them eat with such gusto. "You were a ballet teacher," he said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. Isabella looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "People talk," he replied vaguely, a subtle smile playing on his lips. "Why did you stop?" "I didn't stop." Her voice softened, a shadow passing over her face. "The academy closed during the pandemic. Afterwards, with Michael's illness." "Michael, my husband. He passed away 8 months ago." The children, oblivious to the sudden shift in the conversation's tone, were now happily making airplanes out of their paper napkins. "I'm so sorry," Alexander said, his voice filled with a genuine, unexpected empathy. "Do you have family who can help you?" "My mother lives in Arizona, but she's ill herself. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden, Isabella. You're a fighter," he said, his gaze direct, unwavering. She offered a sad, wistful smile. "A fighter without a ring to fight in." "Perhaps I can help you find one." Alexander hesitated, then continued, a new resolve in his voice. "There's an empty storefront near here. It could be converted into a beautiful dance academy." I can't accept. It's not charity, Isabella. It's an investment. You provide the talent. I provide the space. Isabella's eyes filled with unshed tears. Why are you doing this? She whispered, her voice trembling. Because... Alexander paused, surprised by the intensity of his own unexpected feelings. Because I believe in you. Mommy, look! Leo interrupted, proudly displaying his empty plate. Can we have ice cream? The tension of the moment shattered, replaced by a chorus of delighted giggles. As the children devoured their ice cream sundaes, Alexander and Isabella continued to talk, discovering, with a growing sense of surprise, that they had far more in common than they ever could have imagined. At the end of the night, as they walked back towards the station, the twins, exhausted but happy, had fallen asleep in their arms. Thank you, Isabella whispered, her voice soft, sincere, not just for dinner, but for treating us like normal people. You are more than normal, Alexander responded, his gaze meeting hers in the soft glow of the city lights. You are extraordinary. In that moment, under the vast, indifferent expanse of the New York City sky, both of them felt that something truly important was beginning, something neither of them dared to name yet, a fragile, precious connection forged in the most unlikely of circumstances. What if the quiet hours of a shared solitude, under the vast, indifferent gaze of a sleeping city, became the sacred space where two guarded hearts finally dared to reveal their deepest vulnerabilities, forging a bond stronger than either could have ever anticipated. And then what happened to the princess? Lucas asked, snuggled beside his brother under the worn blankets, his voice sleepy but insistent. The princess decided she didn't need a castle to be happy, Isabella Rossi replied softly, gently stroking their hair. She just needed love. Like us? Leo murmured, half asleep. Alexander Blackwood, sitting nearby in the dim light of the station, observed the scene in silence. It had become a quiet custom for him to stay after Grand Central Terminal officially closed, sharing these tranquil, stolen hours with Isabella and her sons. You have a gift for stories, he said when the children finally drifted off to sleep. Isabella sat beside him on the cold, hard bench. Michael used to make them up for the boys. I'm just trying to keep that tradition alive. Tell me about him, Alexander prompted gently. He was a bus driver, she began, her voice soft with memory. He worked double shifts so I could teach ballet. He dreamed of seeing the twins go to college. Her voice broke, a single tear escaping. The cancer took him in 3 months. Alexander instinctively took her hand, his touch surprisingly comforting. I'm so sorry. And you? Isabella asked, her gaze searching his. You never talk about your life. He remained silent for a moment, the weight of unspoken history heavy between them. There's not much to tell. I inherited my father's company. I got engaged to his best friend's daughter. Everything was meticulously planned. Was? She questioned softly. Until I met you, he admitted, the words escaping him before he could stop them, raw and honest. The silence that followed was charged with unspoken possibilities, with fears neither of them dared to voice. Alexander, Isabella gently withdrew her hand. I can't be the reason you change your life. You're not, he insisted, his voice firm. You're the reason I realize my life needs to change. At that moment, a lone security guard passed by on his rounds. Both Isabella and Alexander instinctively separated, the fragile intimacy of the moment shattered. You should go, she whispered. Your fiancé must be waiting. Diana and I. Alexander rose slowly, a weary sigh escaping him. Things aren't good. Things are never good when you're living between two worlds. He looked at her for a long moment before leaving. Perhaps it's time I chose one. That night, as Isabella held her sleeping children close, she thought about how quickly life could change. 3 months ago, this station was merely a cold, impersonal refuge. Now, somehow, it had become the unexpected stage for something that both terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Don't fall in love, she whispered to herself, a desperate plea against the undeniable pull of her own heart. Not with someone who lives in a world so different from yours. But her heart, as she knew all too well, rarely listened to reason. What if a simple act of kindness, a shared moment of joy, could ignite a spark of audacious hope, compelling a man to defy expectations and offer a future neither of them had ever dared to imagine? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Isabella Rossi's voice, clear and melodious, echoed in a quiet corner of Grand Central Terminal. She guided a small group of children, including her own beaming twins, through basic ballet steps. Their joyful laughter attracted the attention of passing commuters, some of whom dropped coins into a worn cap Rosa, the flower vendor, had discreetly placed nearby. Alexander Blackwood appeared amidst the impromptu class, this time without his usual formal suit, dressed instead in casual jeans and a simple shirt. "May I join?" he asked, surprising everyone, especially Isabella. "Yes," the children shouted in unison before Isabella could even respond. "I didn't know you danced," she said, a playful smile tugging at her lips as she watched him awkwardly attempt a basic plie. "I don't," he admitted, a self-deprecating grin on his face. "But one can always learn." For the next hour, Isabella patiently guided them all through simple exercises. Her eyes sparkled as she corrected postures and encouraged the little ones, her passion for dance radiating through the bustling station. For those precious moments, she seemed to forget where she was, lost in the joy of teaching. "You were happy teaching," Alexander commented during a short break, his voice soft, observant. "It was my life," Isabella replied, gently adjusting a little girl's stance. "Ballet saved me when I was young. I wanted to do the same for others. And what if you could do it again?" Alexander's voice was serious now, his gaze intense. "Isabella, I mean it. Come with me." He took her hand and led her out of the station, a sense of urgency in his steps. A block away, he stopped in front of a vacant storefront, its large windows dusty but promising. "This space," he began, his voice filled with a quiet excitement. "No," Isabella immediately interjected, pulling her hand away, a flicker of her old fear returning. "I can't accept any more help from you, Alexander. It's too much." "It's not help, Isabella. It's an opportunity. For you, for the children at the station, for everyone." "And what will your fiancé say about this?" she challenged, her voice tight with doubt. Alexander fell silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. "I ended things with Diana," he stated simply. Isabella stared at him, stunned. "What?" "Last night, after our conversation. I couldn't keep pretending." "Alexander, I don't want to be the reason." "You're not the reason, Isabella. You're the catalyst." He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "You made me see what truly matters, what I truly want." They stood there in silence, the noisy city fading into a distant hum, their unspoken emotions a palpable presence between them. "I'm scared," Isabella finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "Me too," Alexander admitted, his voice raw with a vulnerability she had never seen before. "But I'm more afraid of not trying." From the station, the children's laughter called them back, their voices a joyful, insistent chorus, urging them to continue the dance lesson. The moment, fragile and intense, was broken, but something profound had shifted between them. "Think about it," he said before they returned to the waiting children. "Sometimes, dreams deserve a second chance." Isabella looked at the vacant storefront one last time before rejoining the class. Perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to allow herself to dream again. What if the price of a dream was the fury of an empire, and the courage to defy expectations meant risking everything for a love and a vision that no one else understood? Could one man's conviction truly change the world around him? "Have you lost your mind, Alexander?" Richard Vance, Alexander's uncle and a powerful board member, slammed his fist on the polished mahogany desk. "A ballet academy in a commercial building? This is preposterous." The project, Alexander knew, could be modified, adapted. He spread out the new blueprints across the table, his vision clear and unwavering. "The ground floor will be dedicated to social spaces, Richard. The academy, a community dining hall, a small library. Your father built this empire with luxury projects, Alexander. High-end retail, exclusive residences. Not charity cases. My father is gone, Alexander stated, his voice calm but firm, rising slowly to his feet. And I run this company now. In the boardroom, the assembled executives murmured amongst themselves as they reviewed the proposed modifications. The news of his breakup with Diana, a strategic alliance carefully orchestrated by both families, had already spread like wildfire through their elite social circle. It's because of her, isn't it? Richard hissed, his voice low and venomous. The homeless woman from the station, the one you've been seen with. Watch your words, Richard. Alexander's voice turned to ice. She has a name, and she is more than you could ever comprehend. Leaving the tense, unproductive office meeting, Alexander drove straight to Grand Central Terminal. He found Isabella Rossi selling flowers, her sons, Leo and Lucas, drawing happily on the station floor with brightly colored chalk. Bad day? She asked, noticing the grim set of his jaw. Complicated, he admitted, sitting beside the children, a weary sigh escaping him. Can I draw too? Leo offered him a piece of blue chalk. For a fleeting moment, Alexander Blackwood, the real estate magnate, the powerful CEO, became just a man, sitting on the cold concrete floor of a train station, drawing with two little boys who had impossibly captured his heart. The board isn't happy, he finally confessed, his voice low. I don't need you to risk everything for us, Alexander, Isabella said, her gaze filled with a quiet understanding. I'm not doing it for you or for the children, not entirely. Alexander looked at her, his eyes shining with a newfound, fierce determination. I'm doing it for me. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something that truly matters, something real. Look, Uncle Alex. Lucas proudly displayed his drawing. It's our new house. The words Uncle Alex struck Alexander like a physical blow, a wave of unexpected, overwhelming emotion washing over him. When had he become so important to these children? To her? It's beautiful, Lucas, he responded, his voice thick, as Isabella quickly, discreetly, wiped away a tear. That night, alone in his vast, empty office, Alexander made a decision. He pulled out the property deeds for the Grand Central Terminal project and began to write, his pen moving with a newfound purpose. His phone rang, a sharp, unwelcome intrusion. It was his mother, her voice cold with disapproval. Diana is devastated. What will people say, Alexander? Are you truly throwing everything away for a homeless ballet teacher? Mother? Alexander took a deep, steadying breath. For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I want. He hung up and looked out the panoramic window towards the illuminated station. Somewhere down there, a family, an unconventional, unexpected family, had shown him the true meaning of success, of happiness, of a life well lived. What if the dream you dared to build was suddenly threatened by a cruel, calculated lie, forcing you to question everything you believed and testing the very foundations of a love that had just begun to blossom? Could trust survive in the face of devastating public exposure? Real estate magnate Alexander Blackwood announces renovation of Grand Central Terminal. Project includes eviction of illegal occupants. The newspaper headline, stark and brutal, trembled in Isabella Rossi's hands. The accompanying photograph showed Alexander Blackwood at a press conference, smiling confidently alongside a group of stern-faced investors. Mommy! Leo tugged at her skirt, his small face etched with confusion. Why are you crying? Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, quickly approached, gently leading the children away. Come, little ones, help me with the flowers. Isabella couldn't tear her gaze from the damning article. 3 months. In 3 short months, the demolition would begin. All their conversations with Alexander, the shared dreams, the whispered promises, had they all been a lie? Miss Rossi, a security guard approached her, his expression apologetic. Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you in his office. I'm not going, she stated, her voice cold, flat. He insisted it was important, ma'am. Tell him I've already read the news. The other station dwellers looked at her with pity, some already beginning to pack their meager belongings. I should have known, a woman muttered, her voice laced with bitterness. Rich people never change. Isabella gathered her children and their few possessions. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Where are we going, Mommy? Lucas asked, his voice small, frightened. To find another place, my love. And Uncle Alex? The name, once spoken with such affection, now pierced her heart like a shard of ice. Uncle Alex is busy. As she walked towards the station exit, her steps heavy with a crushing sense of betrayal, she heard his voice calling her name. Isabella, wait. She didn't stop. She couldn't face him. Not now. Please. Alexander caught up with her, breathless. His eyes filled with a desperate urgency. It's not what it looks like, isn't it? She finally turned, her voice dripping with a furious, heartbroken sarcasm. Then what is it, Alexander? A rich man playing savior? Did you have fun with us? With our foolish hopes? The plans changed. The board. I don't care about your excuses. She cut him off, her voice rising. You lied to us. The twins stared, confused and frightened by the raw emotion in their mother's voice. A voice they had never heard before. Everything I told you was true, Alexander insisted, his own voice laced with desperation. My feelings. Your feelings. Isabella laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the vast station. What feelings can someone who plays with the hopes of entire families possibly have? Give me an hour. Just 1 hour to explain. There's nothing left to explain. Isabella took her children's hands, her resolve hardening. Goodbye, Mr. Blackwood. She walked away without looking back, the rain beginning to fall, mingling with the silent tears streaming down her face, a mirror of the storm raging within her heart. What if the truth was a fragile whisper, easily lost amidst the roar of betrayal and despair? Could a desperate man find a way to break through the walls of pain and misunderstanding before it was too late, and before the woman he loved, and the children he'd come to cherish, vanished from his life forever? The following days were a living nightmare for Alexander Blackwood. Isabella Rossi had disappeared without a trace. Even Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, didn't know where she had gone. She left with a friend, was all Rosa would say, her usual warmth replaced by a cold, protective disapproval. And you'd better leave her in peace, Mr. Blackwood. But Alexander couldn't. Every night, he roamed the streets near Grand Central Terminal, showing photos of the children to other street vendors, his voice hoarse with desperation. Have you seen them? He'd ask, again and again, his heart aching with each shake of the head. In his opulent office, the modified blueprints for the community center project lay scattered across his desk, a mocking testament to his shattered dreams. The board of directors, furious at his defiance, had leaked the original eviction notice before he could present his revised, compassionate plans. It's for the best, Richard Vance, his uncle, insisted, his voice dripping with false concern. Now you can finally focus on the real business, on what truly matters. But Alexander could no longer think about business, about profits, about a future that didn't include Isabella and her children. He only saw their faces, Leo's mischievous grin, Lucas's thoughtful gaze, Isabella's resilient smile. He saw them in the hurried sketches Lucas made on the station floor, in the impromptu ballet classes Isabella held, in the quiet, stolen moments of shared storytelling that had become the highlights of his empty days. One afternoon, while desperately searching local shelters, his phone rang. An urgent, frantic call. Mr. Blackwood, it's City General Hospital. We have 2 children here with severe pneumonia. They named you as their emergency contact. His heart stopped. The twins. Yes, their mother is here. But the nurse hesitated. Alexander didn't wait to hear more. He drove like a madman to the hospital, his mind a chaotic whirlwind of fear and a desperate, fragile hope. He found them in the pediatric emergency room. Leo and Lucas, their small bodies connected to oxygen masks, their faces pale and still. Isabella sat slumped between their two small beds, utterly devastated, her clothes soaked, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked softly, his voice filled with a quiet anguish. She didn't respond, her gaze fixed on her sons, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. They had been sleeping on the streets, exposed to the relentless rain and chilling cold. "The antibiotics are expensive," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know what to do. "Let me help you, please," he pleaded, his voice raw with emotion. "Why? So you can abandon us again?" Her words, though spoken in a whisper, were like a physical blow. "I never abandoned you, Isabella." Alexander knelt beside her chair, his own eyes now filled with tears. "The project, it changed. Everything changed. For you. For them." The cardiac monitors beeped steadily, a stark, rhythmic counterpoint to their raw, unspoken pain. In the sterile silence of the hospital room, two shattered souls began, tentatively, to reconnect. "Give me a chance to explain," he begged, his voice thick with unshed tears. "For them." Isabella looked at her sleeping children, their small chests rising and falling with each labored breath, then back at him at the raw desperation in his eyes. The pride, the anger, the fear that had consumed her for days, slowly began to recede, replaced by a fragile, terrifying hope. "One chance," she finally conceded, her voice a mere breath. "That's all you have. What if a single, desperate explanation held the power to mend a shattered trust, and a shared vulnerability became the unexpected bridge between two worlds torn apart by lies and misunderstanding? Could truth, finally spoken, pave the way for a future neither dared to imagine? 39 degrees Celsius. The nurse murmured, checking Lucas's temperature. "At least it's coming down." Alexander Blackwood hadn't moved from the hospital in 3 long days. He had arranged for clean clothes for everyone, ensured they had food, and, most importantly, made certain the twins received the best possible medical care. "You didn't have to stay," Isabella Rossi said, her voice still weak, exhausted, as she sat in the uncomfortable armchair beside the children's beds. "Yes, I did." He approached, offering her a cup of lukewarm coffee from the hospital cafeteria. "We need to talk." Isabella took the cup, allowing herself this small moment of respite, of fragile connection. "I'm listening." "The original project, the demolition, it changed weeks ago," Alexander began, his voice low, earnest. "I was preparing the announcement when the board leaked the old version, the one designed to evict everyone." He pulled out his tablet and showed her the new blueprints, the ones he had so passionately worked on. "Look." On the screen, the cold, sterile train station transformed into a vibrant community center. The Isabella Rossi Ballet Academy occupied the main space, surrounded by accessible local shops and affordable social housing. "Why?" she whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief, hope warring with years of ingrained skepticism. "Because I saw you teach ballet," he replied, his gaze direct, unwavering. "I saw how you transformed lives with nothing more than your passion, your unwavering belief in those children. You taught me that building doesn't always mean demolishing what already exists. Sometimes it means nurturing it, helping it grow." Leo coughed in his sleep, and both rushed to his side, their hands brushing as they adjusted his blankets. "The board is furious," Alexander continued, his voice a low murmur. "But it's my company now, Isabella, and I want to do something that truly matters. Something real." "Uncle Alex," Lucas mumbled, waking up, his eyes still cloudy with sleep. "Are you going to leave us again?" The innocent question, filled with a child's raw vulnerability, pierced Alexander's heart. He sat on the edge of the bed, his gaze soft, reassuring. "No, champ. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise." Isabella watched the scene, the carefully constructed walls around her heart beginning to crumble, brick by painful brick. "I missed you so much," Alexander admitted, looking directly at her, his voice thick with emotion. "All 3 of you. We missed you too," she responded softly, her voice barely a whisper. More than we should have. The night advanced as the children slowly, steadily improved. Between medication rounds and temperature checks, Isabella and Alexander rebuilt the fragile bridges that fear and misunderstanding had so cruelly destroyed. "What happens when they leave the hospital?" he asked, his voice filled with a hesitant hope. "I don't know," she confessed. "We can't go back to the street. I have an apartment, Alexander, in the company building. It's temporary, until the project is finished. Until we can all go home." He took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Please, Isabella, let me do this right this time. Let me be there for you, for them." In the dim, sterile light of the hospital room, as their children slept peacefully, finally out of danger, Isabella felt something shift within her. It wasn't just the broken trust beginning to mend. It was hope, a fragile, terrifying, yet undeniably beautiful hope, taking root in her weary heart. "All right?" she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "But this time, Alexander, no secrets." "No secrets," he promised, sealing the pact with a gentle squeeze of her hand. A silent vow under the watchful gaze of a city that never slept. What if a fragile truce, born from desperation and a shared love for two small children, began to blossom into something more profound, challenging past hurts and daring to imagine a future neither of them had ever thought possible? The boardroom was silent as Alexander Blackwood presented the definitive plans for the Grand Central Terminal renovation. In the front row, Isabella Rossi watched nervously, dressed in a simple but elegant suit Alexander had insisted on buying for her. "The New Hope Cultural Center will not only transform the station," Alexander explained, his voice resonating with a newfound, quiet confidence, "but it will preserve its essence as a community space." The images on the screen showed a modern yet welcoming building. The Isabella Rossi Ballet Academy occupied the heart of the project, surrounded by spaces for small local businesses and affordable housing units. "And who will direct this academy?" an investor asked, his tone dripping with thinly veiled disdain. "I will." Isabella stood, her voice clear and strong, her chin held high. "I have 10 years of experience and certifications from the National Institute of Fine Arts." "The homeless woman?" someone whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maestra Isabella Rossi," Alexander corrected firmly, his gaze sweeping across the room, daring anyone to challenge him. "Will be our artistic director." Richard Vance, Alexander's uncle, rose furiously. "This is ridiculous. First, you cancel your wedding to Diana, and now this. You're destroying the Blackwood legacy. If you don't agree with the new direction of this company," Alexander responded calmly, his voice unwavering, "you can sell your shares. I will buy every single one of them." The room erupted in murmurs. Isabella looked at him, surprised by his bold, decisive move. "You can't risk everything for—" "I'm not risking anything, Isabella," he interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm investing in something worthwhile, something real." One by one, the investors began to review the numbers. The project, though different, was still undeniably profitable, perhaps even more so with its focus on community and social impact. "You have until tomorrow to decide," Alexander concluded. "The Hope Cultural Center will be built, with or without you." They left the boardroom together. In the hallway, Isabella stopped him. "Why didn't you tell me you would buy the shares?" "Because I didn't want you to worry," he replied, taking her hands in his. "Trust me, Isabella. This time, everything will be different." "The children keep asking when we're going back to the station," she said, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Soon," he smiled back, "but not to sleep on the floor, to build their new home." At that moment, Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, appeared with the twins, who ran through the corporate hallway as if it were their personal playground, their joyous laughter echoing. "Mommy! Uncle Alex!" they shouted in unison, their faces beaming. "Look at our drawings." They proudly displayed childish sketches of the new building, filled with vibrant colors and boundless hope. "This will be our ballet studio," Lucas exclaimed, pointing to a particularly enthusiastic scribble. And this is where we'll all live, Leo added, his eyes shining. Alexander and Isabella exchanged knowing glances. In the innocent drawings of two small children, the future seemed perfectly, beautifully clear. What if the path to rebuilding was fraught with unexpected challenges, forcing a fragile new family to find strength not just in shared dreams, but in the quiet, unwavering support they offered each other, proving that true love can blossom even amidst the lingering shadows of the past. The storm battered New York City as the families from Grand Central Terminal gathered in the communal hall of the Blackwood corporate building. Alexander Blackwood had insisted on providing them shelter during the transition period, a temporary haven from the harsh realities of the street. Each family will have priority for the new apartments, Isabella Rossi explained, distributing application forms, her voice calm and reassuring. And there will be jobs available for those who need them. Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, now the coordinator of the community project, helped organize the groups. Her old flower stall would soon be transformed into a proper, charming florist shop in the New Hope Cultural Center. But how will we pay? A young single mother asked, her voice filled with a familiar anxiety. With work and time, Alexander responded, having just arrived, his presence a source of quiet reassurance. The rents will be proportional to your income. The twins, Leo and Lucas, ran to hug him, already accustomed to his daily presence in their lives. They wore new clothes, a stark contrast to their previous worn-out attire, but they still clung to their old cardboard carts, a poignant reminder of where they came from. Did you show them the uniforms? He asked Isabella, a warm smile on his face. She pulled out a tiny ballet tunic, its soft fabric a symbol of hope. The little girls in the station gasped with excitement. Classes will begin as soon as the academy is finished, Isabella announced, her voice filled with pride. And they will be accessible to everyone. In a quiet corner, Richard Vance, Alexander's uncle, observed the scene. He had been the last to accept the radical changes, the shift in the company's focus, but he finally understood Alexander's vision. I've never seen you so sure of anything, he admitted, approaching his nephew, a newfound respect in his voice. I've never been so sure, Alexander responded, his gaze fixed on Isabella as she patiently organized the families, her quiet strength a beacon in the room. The meeting continued late into the night. When everyone else had left, only Alexander, Isabella, and the sleeping children remained in the vast, silent hall. Do you think it will work? Isabella asked, her voice weary but hopeful. It's already working, Alexander replied, gesturing towards the window. In the distance, the lights of Grand Central Terminal illuminated a large banner proclaiming the future Hope Cultural Center. Beneath it, families who had once hidden in the shadows now walked with a newfound dignity, their faces alight with anticipation. We built a bridge, she whispered, her eyes shining. No, Isabella. Alexander took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. We built a home. The rain continued to fall outside, a cleansing sound, but this time, there were no leaky roofs or chilling drafts. Only the warmth of a shared promise being fulfilled, and the vibrant dream of a better future taking tangible shape. What if the rhythm of rebuilding a community mirrored the delicate dance of two hearts learning to trust again, and a shared passion for art became the language of an unspoken love, challenging them to take a leap of faith into an unknown, yet breathtakingly hopeful, future. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Isabella Rossi's voice, clear and encouraging, resonated in the provisional studio they had set up. The children from the station, now dressed in donated leotards and ballet slippers, followed her instructions with eager enthusiasm. Among them, Leo and Lucas attempted to maintain their balance, their clumsy efforts provoking delighted giggles when they stumbled. Just like their mother, Alexander Blackwood murmured from the doorway, remembering the first time he had seen Isabella teaching with such grace and passion in the cold, impersonal expanse of Grand Central Terminal. The construction of the Hope Cultural Center was advancing rapidly. From the studio window, they could see the beams of the new building rising against the New York City skyline, a tangible symbol of hope where once only deterioration and despair had reigned. Mr. Blackwood, a little girl, Alexandra, ran towards him, her face beaming. "Can you dance with us?" "Alexandra," Isabella gently chided, a warm smile on her face. "Mr. Blackwood is busy." "Actually," he smiled, taking off his jacket, a playful glint in his eyes, "I have time for one class." The children cheered as Alexander awkwardly joined the line. Isabella couldn't help but suppress a laugh as she watched him attempt a basic pirouette, his usual corporate confidence replaced by a charming, endearing clumsiness. "Knees bent," she corrected, gently placing her hands on his shoulders to adjust his posture. "Back straight." The unexpected contact sent a jolt of electricity through both of them. For a fleeting moment, the world around them seemed to stop, their gazes locking, an unspoken acknowledgement of the powerful connection growing between them. "Like this?" he whispered, his eyes searching hers. "Almost," she replied, her voice a little breathless, as she gently pulled away. The class continued, but something had subtly, yet irrevocably, shifted. The furtive glances, the accidental touches, everything spoke of feelings they could no longer contain, no longer deny. When the children had left, their joyous laughter echoing in the hallway, Alexander and Isabella remained alone in the studio. "You dance terribly," she teased, her eyes sparkling. "I need a better teacher," he countered, a playful challenge in his voice. "Is that a proposal?" "Maybe." Alexander stepped closer, his gaze intense. "Would you accept? To teach me? Ballet or life?" she asked softly, her heart fluttering. "Both." The late afternoon sun painted long, dancing shadows on the studio walls as they stood on the precipice of something new, something terrifying, something undeniably beautiful. "Alexander," Isabella whispered, her voice barely audible. "This thing we're building, Isabella," he completed, his voice raw with emotion. "It's real as you and I are in this moment." The music from the children's class still played softly in the background as their lips finally met, a tender, hesitant kiss that spoke of shared dreams, healed wounds, and a love story that had been patiently, quietly, rehearsing its steps since that very first, fateful day. What if a dream opportunity from a forgotten past reappeared, forcing you to choose between a future you always craved and a present love that had unexpectedly, miraculously, become your everything? Could two hearts, finally aligned, withstand the pull of ambition and the fear of loss? In the bustling makeshift cafeteria of the Blackwood Holdings temporary offices, a space carved out, while the New Hope Cultural Center was under construction, Isabella Rossi stirred her coffee, her mind a whirlwind. Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, now a cherished friend and confidant, watched her with knowing maternal concern. "You look happy, dear," Rosa said, her voice warm, but also scared. The prestigious National Dance Academy in Monterrey, Mexico, had offered Isabella a position as principal instructor. It was a dream she had nurtured since she was a young girl, a dream she thought had died with Michael, with the crushing weight of debt and despair. "It's a wonderful opportunity," Isabella confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "But it's in Monterrey." The unspoken words hung heavy in the air. Monterrey was a world away. In a nearby private meeting room, Leo and Lucas, now vibrant and healthy, were engrossed in a drawing session, oblivious to the adult conversation. "Have you told him yet?" Rosa asked gently. "How could I?" Isabella looked out the window towards the rising structure of the Hope Cultural Center, a tangible symbol of everything she and Alexander had built together. "Everything he's doing, everything we've built, this community, this new life. True love doesn't bind, dear," Rosa said, her voice filled with a quiet wisdom. "It liberates, it supports, it encourages you to fly." At that moment, Alexander Blackwood appeared in the doorway, his usually composed expression softened by a genuine smile as he saw Isabella. His smile, however, faded slightly as he sensed the underlying tension in the room. "What's wrong?" he asked, his gaze shifting from Isabella to Rosa, a flicker of concern in his eyes. Rosa discreetly gathered the children, leaving Alexander and Isabella alone. "I received an offer," Isabella began, her voice trembling, the words tumbling out in a rush. The National Dance Academy in Monterey. They want me as their principal instructor. She watched his face, searching for a reaction, her heart pounding. Alexander sat down across from her, his expression unreadable. I know, he said quietly. You know? She asked, stunned. The director called me. She wanted my recommendation. Isabella stared at him, speechless. And what did you tell her? The truth, he replied, taking her hand, his touch gentle but firm. That you are the best, most inspiring teacher I have ever known, and that you deserve every opportunity in the world. Tears began to stream down Isabella's face. I don't want to leave you, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Who said anything about leaving? Alexander smiled, his eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering love. Blackwood Holdings needs to expand. Monterey seems like a good place to start. Don't you think? What? She gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. Unless you'd prefer me to stay here alone, missing you both every single day. He continued, his voice now light, teasing. You'd come with us? I'd go to the end of the world with you, Isabella, he said, his voice turning serious again, filled with a profound sincerity. If you'll have me. He squeezed her hand. The question is, are you ready for that? Isabella looked towards where her sons were playing with Rosa, their joyous laughter echoing through the bustling cafeteria. In 6 short months, their lives had transformed completely. From the cold, unforgiving streets of New York City to this, a new life filled with hope, with purpose, with love. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Me too, Alexander confessed, rising from his chair and kneeling beside her. But I'm more scared of losing you. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet ring box. It wasn't a business proposal, not this time. This was from the heart. The twins, who had been spying from a nearby corner, came running towards them. Say yes, Mommy, Lucas shouted, his face beaming. We want Uncle Alex to be our daddy, Leo added, his eyes shining with a child's pure, uncomplicated hope. Amidst tears and laughter, Isabella looked at her improvised, extraordinary family. Sometimes she thought the best plans are the ones we never make. Yes, she whispered, her voice filled with a profound, joyful certainty. Yes to everything. What if the greatest masterpiece wasn't a towering skyscraper, but a family built on love, resilience, and the courage to rewrite their own story, proving that true happiness is found not in grand designs, but in the simple, heartfelt rhythm of everyday life. The Hope Cultural Center took shape rapidly, a beacon of transformation in the heart of New York City. The once imposing glass walls of the old train station now reflected the vibrant sunrise, a daily promise of new beginnings. Inside, the construction workers, many of them former inhabitants of the station, diligently initiated their workday, their movements filled with a newfound sense of purpose. The mirrors for the ballet studio arrived today. Richard Vance, now fully committed to Alexander's vision and an active participant in the project's management, announced. And the East Wing housing units are almost ready for occupancy. Isabella Rossi supervised the installation of the ballet bars, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. She felt small hands encircle her legs. Mommy, look! Leo pointed towards the enormous arched window. You can see the whole city. And there was our little corner, Lucas added, his voice tinged with a touch of nostalgia, pointing towards the far end of the old station platform. Alexander Blackwood appeared, blueprints tucked under his arm, his hair disheveled by the construction site wind. He no longer wore formal suits during these site supervisions, his attire now as practical and unpretentious as his newfound approach to life. The move to Monterey is all set, he said, gently kissing Isabella's cheek. The apartment is waiting for us in 2 weeks. The children ran towards him, their faces beaming with excitement. Can we bring our cardboard carts, Uncle Alex? You can bring whatever you want, Alexander replied, ruffling their hair. It's your home too. Rosa, the elderly flower vendor, appeared with a tray of coffee for everyone. Her new florist's apron, a crisp, clean white, contrasted sharply with the lingering dust of the construction site. Who would have thought? The old woman smiled, her eyes twinkling. That rainy night would end like this? Isabella observed the transformation around her. Where once only despair and hopelessness had reigned, dreams were now taking tangible, vibrant shape. The families from the station had jobs, their children were attending school, and her ballet academy would soon open its doors, a haven of art and hope. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That sometimes happy endings do exist," she whispered, leaning into his embrace. "This isn't an ending, Isabella," he murmured against her hair. "It's just the beautiful beginning." Through the vast windows, the city awakened, a symphony of light and sound. Somewhere, other Isabellas waited for an opportunity. Other children dreamed of dancing. "We'll build more centers," Alexander promised, as if reading her thoughts. "In every city where someone needs hope, where a dream waits to be born." The twins danced improvisational steps in the half-finished studio, their joyous laughter mingling with the sounds of construction, a vibrant melody of resilience. "Ready for our new life?" he asked, his voice filled with a quiet, confident love. Isabella looked around one last time. The station that had once been her cold, impersonal refuge was now transforming into a sanctuary for others, a testament to the power of compassion and second chances. "Ready?" she responded, intertwining her fingers with his. "As long as it's with you." What if the grandest stage wasn't a corporate boardroom, but a community theater filled with the joyous sounds of children's laughter? And the most profound legacy wasn't an empire of steel and glass, but a vibrant tapestry of lives transformed by love, art, and the unwavering belief in the power of a shared dream. The auditorium of the Hope Cultural Center was packed. It was opening night, and a palpable buzz of excitement, of nervous anticipation, filled the air. Backstage, Isabella anxiously adjusted Lucas's costume, while Leo practiced his pirouettes one last time. "Quiet, my loves," Isabella whispered, trying to calm their pre-performance jitters. Her students, a vibrant mix of children from the old station and new enrollees, were preparing for their first major performance. "Are my dancers ready?" Alexander appeared backstage, holding 2 small bouquets, his eyes shining with pride. "Uncle Alex!" The twins ran towards him, their faces beaming. "Did you see how many people are out there? And they all came to see us shine." The murmur of the audience grew louder. In the front row, Rosa and the families from the station waited, their faces alight with emotion. Richard Vance, surprisingly, had brought his own daughter to Isabella's classes, a silent testament to the profound changes that had swept through their lives. 5 minutes, the stage technician announced. Isabella gathered her students in a circle. "Remember," she said, her voice clear and strong, "it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. What matters is that you dance with your heart. Like you taught us, Maestra." One of the little girls whispered, her eyes wide with admiration. The house lights dimmed. Alexander took Isabella's hand. "Before it begins," he whispered, a mischievous glint in his eyes, "I have a surprise." He led her towards a newly unveiled plaque at the auditorium entrance. Under the soft lights, Isabella read the inscription, "The Michael Rossi Theater, in memory of those who taught us to dream." Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the engraved letters. Michael, her late husband, a simple bus driver who dreamed of seeing his sons go to college. "He would be proud," Alexander said softly, "of you, of the children, of everything you've built." The music began to play. On stage, her students began to tell a story with their bodies. A story of a station transformed into a home. A story of hope reborn from despair. The twins, in their solos, danced with a grace that blended technique and raw, innocent emotion. The audience held its breath as Lucas executed a perfect, breathtaking spin. Backstage, Isabella and Alexander watched, hand in hand, their wedding rings, simple, elegant bands exchanged in a quiet, private ceremony months ago, glinting softly under the theater lights. "Ready for Monterey?" he whispered, his voice filled with love. "Ready for anything," she responded, her eyes shining. "As long as we're together." On stage, the performance continued, a new generation of dancers telling their story, transforming pain into art, despair into breathtaking beauty. The Michael Rossi Theater had opened its doors, and with it, thousands of dreams were beginning to dance. What if the truest measure of success wasn't found in a single, triumphant finale, but in the quiet, enduring rhythm of a life lived with purpose, a love nurtured with patience, and a legacy of hope that continued to unfold, one compassionate act, one shared dream, at a time. The last rays of dawn painted the old train station, now the vibrant Hope Cultural Center, in hues of rose and gold. Rosa had decorated every corner with fresh flowers for the farewell gathering. "So you never forget where it all began," the old woman said, embracing the twins, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Rosa's flower shop, now an elegant boutique within the cultural center, was a thriving symbol of the community's transformation. Her former street vendor colleagues were now proud entrepreneurs in the new complex. "Take good care of them," she whispered to Alexander, as she arranged a bouquet of white roses, her hands gnarled but gentle. "They are a gift from heaven." "I know," he replied, his gaze drifting towards Isabella, who was rehearsing with a final group of children in the sun-drenched ballet studio. "Every day, I thank my lucky stars for that chance encounter at this station." The twins ran through the hallways, saying goodbye to every familiar nook and cranny. Their beloved cardboard carts, now historic relics, would occupy a special place in their new home in Monterey. "Look, Mommy," Leo pointed to a newly painted mural on one of the station walls. The artist had captured a poignant moment. A mother and her two small children, asleep on a cold station platform, while a man in a suit observed them from a distance, a silent guardian angel. "Life takes many turns," Richard Vance commented, having come to say his goodbyes. "Who would have thought I'd end up managing a cultural center?" "Miracles exist," Isabella responded, taking Alexander's hand, her smile radiant. The families from the station began to arrive for the farewell gathering, each one carrying their own story of transformation, of hope reborn. The taxi waited outside. Alexander gently took Isabella's arm. "Ready?" She took one last look at the station, her heart filled with a profound gratitude. The walls that had once been her cold, impersonal refuge now shimmered with the vibrant energy of hope, of community, of dreams taking flight. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty space, "for giving us a home when we needed it most." The twins said goodbye to Rosa with tears and heartfelt promises of frequent visits. The old woman handed them each a single white rose. "So you always remember," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "that the most beautiful flowers often grow in the most unexpected places." As the taxi pulled away, Isabella rested her head on Alexander's shoulder. The children waved enthusiastically at the station that had witnessed their incredible journey. A new life awaited them in Monterey, but a part of their hearts would always belong to that forgotten corner of New York City, where love had blossomed amidst the shadows of a train station, a love that had, against all odds, found its way. The new National Dance Academy building in Monterey gleamed under the bright morning sun. Isabella adjusted her bun in front of the mirror while the twins practiced diligently in the main studio. "The best teacher in the academy," Alexander smiled from the doorway, holding a newspaper, "and soon-to-be director." "It's not official yet," she replied, but her eyes sparkled with a quiet pride. In 6 short months they had built a new life. The apartment overlooking the park, the classes filled with eager students, Alexander's expanding business ventures. Everything felt like a dream. "Daddy!" The twins ran towards Alexander, their voices filled with affection. The word daddy was still new, but it sounded perfectly natural on their lips. "Ready for the festival?" he asked, lifting them into his arms. The academy was celebrating its annual gala, and the twins would have their first important solo performance. In the front row, Rosa and Richard had traveled from New York to see them. "The cultural center is following in your footsteps," Richard commented to Alexander, showing him photos on his phone. "3 new academies will open next month. And the families? Thriving. Rosa's flower shop is the most popular in the neighborhood." Isabella smiled, remembering those cold nights in the station. How much everything had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "That sometimes fairy tales do exist." She turned to face him. "But they're different from how we imagine them. Better. More real." She caressed his cheek. "With flowers in train stations and millionaires who learn to dance." The twins interrupted the moment, pulling them towards the studio. "Let's practice." As the family danced together, their reflections shimmering in the enormous mirrors, Isabella thought of all the people still sleeping in stations, still waiting for their chance. "We need to build more centers," she said, as if reading Alexander's mind. "It's already in progress," he responded. "Because miracles, my love, must be multiplied." The music continued to play as the sun set over Monterey. Somewhere, another love story was beginning in a train station. But this one, theirs, had found its own extraordinary happy ending. Or perhaps, as Alexander always said, it was just the beautiful, never-ending beginning. Epilogue 2 years later. What if the greatest stories weren't about endings, but about the continuous, evolving dance of life, love, and a legacy that blossomed far beyond the confines of a single stage? 2 years later, the Hope Cultural Center in New York City celebrated its 2nd anniversary. The late afternoon light filtered through the vast arched windows, illuminating the Michael Rossi Theater, now a vibrant hub of artistic expression. Isabella Rossi Blackwood, now the esteemed director of the National Dance Academy, had returned specially for the occasion. Her 6-month baby bump was barely visible under her elegant dress, a quiet testament to a new chapter in their lives. "Nervous," Alexander Blackwood whispered, adjusting Lucas's tie. "Like the first day," she responded, as Leo practiced his steps one last time. The stage was filled with dancers. Students from the academy, children from the streets transformed into artists, seasoned professionals, all united to tell a single, powerful story. Rosa, from her seat of honor, smiled proudly. Her flower shop had grown so much that it now provided employment for 5 families from the old station. 5 minutes. Richard Vance, now the executive director of the Blackwood Foundation for the Arts, announced. The twins, now promising 10-year-old dancers, prepared for their special number. The story they would interpret was their own. 2 children and their mother, finding hope in a train station. "Mommy," Lucas called out before going on stage, "do you think there will be more children like us?" "There are," Isabella responded, her voice filled with a quiet conviction. "And that's why we'll keep building homes for them." Alexander squeezed her hand. In his office, blueprints for 5 new cultural centers awaited his approval. The music began. On stage, the dancers told a story of transformation. Not just of a building, but of hundreds of lives. Backstage, Isabella felt her baby move. "She wants to dance too?" Alexander smiled, placing his hand on her belly. "Like her family?" Isabella responded, her eyes shining with love. The applause filled the theater as the twins executed their perfect, heartfelt number. In the front row, the families from the station wept tears of emotion. Because sometimes, miracles happen in the most unexpected places. Sometimes, love blossoms in the shadows of a train station. And sometimes, happy endings are just the beautiful, inspiring beginning of an even more extraordinary story. Were you captivated by this intense story of betrayal, love, and redemption between Isabella and Alexander? If you enjoyed their passionate journey from a forced marriage to a true love, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends who love telenovelas full of unexpected twists. Your comments are very important to us. We'd love to know which part moved you the most. If you want to keep enjoying more stories like this, with complex characters and romances born in the most impossible circumstances, subscribe to our channel. We publish new chapters every week. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching this story of hope and second chances from?